Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode as well as free training on creativity over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hi, it's James Taylor here. Today's episode was first aired as part of International Authors Summit. This inspiring virtual summit reveals the secrets of making, marketing, and monetizing a best-selling book. If you would like to access the full video version as well as in-depth sessions with over 40 best-selling authors, then I've got a very special offer for you. Just go to internationalauthorssummit.com where you'll be able to register for a free pass for the summit. Yeah, that's right. Over 40 New York Times and Amazon best-selling authors, book editors, agents, and publishers sharing their insights, strategies, and tactics on how to write and market your first or next bestseller. So just go to internationalauthorssummit.com, but not before you listen to today's episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to welcome Lisa Bodell. Lisa is an author, speaker, and the founder and CEO of futurethink, a company which enables organizations to kill complexity, create space for innovation, and get to the work that matters. As a globally recognized innovation leader and futurist, she is the author of Why Simple Wins, Escape the Complexity Trap and Get to Work That Matters, and also Kill the Company, End the Status Quo, Start an Innovation Revolution, which was named one of the best business books of 2012 by booz&co. Lisa has also contributed her expertise to a wide variety of media, including Fast Company, Wired, the New York Times, Inc., Forbes, Harvard Business Review, Fox News, and CNN. It's my great pleasure to have Lisa with us today. So welcome, Lisa.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
So share with everyone what's going on in your world just now.
Well, the big thing from a writing perspective is I'm starting my third book. So this is a very exciting time. And it's one of those things, for the people that are listening here, every time I finish a book, I say, that's it. I'm not writing another one. And then, as you know, if you've written one before, but, you kind of get into that addictive trap of, when you come up with an idea and you want to share it and you want to learn more about it. And it's as much about the journey of it as it is about feeling that finished product when you're done. So I've just started that and I'm in the book proposal stage, but I'm pretty excited about it. I'm building on my last book and I'm hoping to get some research going here in the next month.
So what feels easier going into a third book? What feels easier on a third book and what feels a little bit more difficult?
Well, it's a couple things. First, it's one of those, if I knew then what I know now, you know the routine, the approach. I've got an agent. I have a writer that supports me actually, because I also run a business and I'm on the speaking circuit. I know how to organize my research. I know how to organize my thinking to get a book done in the way that I really want it. So that's one of the things is I don't worry as much about will it be good enough? How will it work? Will I be able to meet my page count, my word count? I know all that stuff. So that feels much easier, the process part. The piece that still always, I think, daunts any writer is, am I going to have a good enough idea? Is this something that's actually going to work out? Is the research going to tell me what I hope it's going to tell me? And the reality is maybe it will, maybe it won't. But we think we have a pretty good hypothesis about what we want to talk about. And we're building on my last book about simplicity, and this time really delving into it from the individual perspective versus just business perspective. And I'm excited to learn about it because I'm still on that simplification journey myself.
So that process of searching for that core idea that you want to have and then finding supporting evidence and doing your research. I was reading something the other day. Ryan Holiday, the writer, was talking about how he goes into this. He does all his research and then he goes into, I think he calls it his drawdown period, where he basically doesn't do anything just before he starts.
Hibernation.
Hibernation, yeah. So he basically kind of goes into this period of like, okay, I need to stop reading, stop inputting the stuff now, and I actually need to just like that time for me to think. Do you work in a kind of similar way, or are you always just along the way you're just trying to kind of write things down and hopefully at the end of that process of researching something will have emerged?
I cast it. Well, I love that kind of the drawdown. I call it hibernation or fetal position, depending on how I'm feeling at the moment. Right? There's that like trough of despair when you think you have nothing and then you emerge from it. I cast a really wide net. I gather everything from the podcast to videos to TED Talks to, people that I sit next to on an airplane. I gather a ton of research and I create a Google Doc and I tab it with, who I should interview, where, different types of categories of research so I can go back to it later. I really love to have it organized. But it is what you're getting at, though, is I think is wanting to know when to say when, basically. So one of the things I like to do is get a really good body of research, probably like a couple hundred pages stuff. And then I do spend a couple weeks just culling, just reading, just organizing. What are the key themes? And then I do more research on those themes. And then I stop. And the reason I stop is because then I think I need to start getting subject matter expertise and devil's advocates. And so one of the things I really like to do is start my interview list of people that are experts in that topic and people that are skeptics on that topic. And that really helps me litmus test my ideas. And the cool thing I'll tell you that I really like to do is talk to people that scare you, which are the people that you're either afraid to talk to, you never think will talk to you, or are going to tell you things you probably don't want to hear, and avant-garde research subjects. I'm giving you more than you asked for, but what was really interesting was, for example, people were telling me around complexity, one of the things is their bosses, right? No one thinks they're the problem. They think everyone else is the problem. And we said, well, we better learn how to deal with bosses. Who should we talk to? And a lot of people we found feel like it's like a marriage. It either could be a good marriage that needs help or a bad marriage that needs help. So we're talking to marriage counselors that can help us understand how do you simplify relationships. And we're talking to hostage negotiators that can also help us understand, right, how to deal with difficult bosses, because you just have to learn how to work within parameters to get the goal you want. And we're trying to take a really different approach to it with this book. So anyway, that's kind of how we go about it. We cast a wide net, and then we find some unusual suspects to add that little spin no one else has.
So you also mentioned like working with a co-writer as well. I've interviewed Lou Aronica as part of this. Lou is Sir Ken Robinson's co-writer and Element, great books. And you were just talking about that relationship that the co-writer has, especially with someone who's a real thought leader like yourself. You're out there speaking. You're kind of very visible in that way. What is for you? What does the co-writer add to the process, and do they take on that devil's advocate role, or do they fulfill a slightly different role from that?
Well, devil's advocate is definitely one of the roles, because I think what you can do is you can fall in love with your idea, become really enamored with it, because you just want to have a great idea and push it forward. And sometimes it's a really crappy idea. Yeah. So one of the things I really like when I'm talking with a co-writer is, it's kind of like a doctor. You have to have the same bedside manner to be able to work together and kind of know what each other's thinking. But you also have to have a level of trust that they can poke holes in your idea and they'll know that you'll respect it. So devil's advocate is definitely one. Another thing is just to be able to shape ideas. I really like to I get all that research and then I like to just spew. I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say yet, but I have to get it out and I have to spew. And the job of the writer to me is just like write down key phrases to hear and try and crystallize it. So, because sometimes you're so close to it, it's hard to pull back, and that's what I need from a writer for me.
And I wonder if that's because you're also known very much as a speaker. So one of the ways that you like obviously communicating, it's a strength for you, communicating in that way. Where some other authors, that's not there. They would prefer much more solitary, kind of sitting there with the page, where you kind of what's that? You can speak. You kind of speak to think through your ideas.
I have to. And the other thing too is that I get very frustrated because I want to get it right now. And kind of like with speakers, I want to all of a sudden get to my key points and my sound bites. And that's I think in terms of what I call stages, not pages. And the reason I say that to people that are aspiring authors is you have to know what you want out of your book. I mean, if you're an academic and you like lots of big words and lots of flowery language, and that's one way to write, and that's one type of writing. That is not me. I like to get to the point. I like to talk in plain language and plain speak. That's why I like to be a simplicity expert. And I like to have sound bites because I think that's how people think now. People don't even read anymore. They watch. They don't read full sentences. They want sound bites. They want pithy phrases. So I think in terms of that, so I can then translate that more quickly to my speeches on stage. Because the goal for me is memorable stuff.
And do you think, is that related to, because early in your career, you worked in advertising?
I think it's related.
Yeah.
related. I mean, now that you say that, I would say, of course, yes, obviously, but I don't know if that.
Okay, I think of like Ogilvy, like great David Ogilvy, which he had this 7 things about how to write, and one of them, was not using flowery language, kind of getting to the point, being quite lean in terms of how you communicated your ideas.
One of my a guy I met when I was doing one of my first talks at Google, and because Google, like TED, when you do the talk, sometimes they give you speech coaches, and he met me, and happily he said, I'm glad I'm your speech coach. You obviously don't need one because you speak a lot, but we became friends. And his company, which is Elevator Speech, he talks about using weekend language. And what I like about weekend language is, how do you talk to your friends if you're having a barbecue or sitting on a patio, or sitting at a pub, and you don't talk in this big flowery language. You talk to them like everyday people. And that's how I like to write my books, because I think my goal is to make it approachable for people, and I want to make them feel like they can do it and be empowered. And if the language doesn't relate to them or it makes them feel dumb, then I've done the opposite of what I want to accomplish.
And when you started moving into the world of writing, who were those mentors or role models for you? Who are the authors that you knew personally and you were able to kind of get mentorship from, or maybe you kind of looked at them from afar and said, that's the type of writer I want to be?
It's funny because I'm a creative writer. When I was younger, I would win a lot of creative writing awards for fiction. So I really liked people that could help spark an imagination. That's number one. But the things that I really liked even more were people that were convincing on their point of view. And that's why I like op-ed writers, because they have to convey people a very specific point of view on sometimes very controversial or complex topics in a very short amount of time. And to me, those are the kind of like political writers. I often engage those kinds of people that can make sense of a topic in a very quick, concise way. And those are the types of writers I.
So as you were starting to kind of go on your writing career, was there a key aha moment that you had? Maybe a time when you said, okay, this is the direction I want to go with my writing, or these are the kind of books I want to write, or these kind of subjects I want to cover?
Mm-hmm. Well, two things, because I have, some people are full-time authors, and that's one route to go. But I'm an entrepreneur. I have a business, and so my book is a platform, not necessarily a legacy for me. I don't know how else to say that, but my point being is it's a vehicle for me to grow my business and my point of view. So my whole thing is that we teach people about change and innovation. And so I wanted to have my book be able to help convey that. And I guess the aha moments for me were when we were trying to teach people innovation and we just couldn't do it. We were getting a lot of pushback and I wanted to know why. And so I said, well, I'm going to figure it out and then write a book about it. So a lot of my books are about overcoming a process or a problem or a challenge to help me work through it with my business. So that's where the aha moments come for me, is in real life, what's holding me back. Same thing with complexity. All right, I'm going to do this research and kind of figure it out for myself and then write a book about it to help others.
So what was it on that piece? You said, companies, companies were hesitant about bringing companies in, other consultants in, to help with that innovation process. What were the challenges? What did you discover in that journey?
Well, I talk about this a lot on stage, this is where Kill the Company came in, which is I've got this training business. It had been around for a decade. Innovation was really hot. All these companies have resources and money and strategic initiatives to get their teams to innovate, and they would hire us and we would get there. And then the very people that brought us in were the ones that were telling us to just not do that much innovation when we got there. So we were really frustrated going, do they really want to do it or not want to do it? Is this just window dressing? And what we started to do is we asked people, why is this so hard for you to do? You asked us to come here. And people said that they want to do it, but they didn't feel empowered to do it, number one. And they didn't have time because they spent most of their day in meetings and emails. So that's where the idea for Killing the Company came in. And that's the idea for where getting rid of complexity came in. If we're spending all our time in meetings and emails, how are we going to be innovative?
So then that was that natural lead on to the second book, which is very much about simplification. Like, okay, if one of your biggest challenges is I just don't have the time to do that deep work. I suppose that the Covey one would say the important but not urgent work that is required. Then that led into that simplification piece.
That's exactly right. And so we came out of Kill the Company, which is why can't people innovate? And the thing was, they don't have the space to think about it. They don't have the space at the time. It's not that they don't want to, they can't get to it. And that's what led to Why Simple Wins. And then it's funny because when I wrote my first book, you have to listen to how people react to your books to really understand what the next one might be. That would be a piece of advice I would give people. And I realized after Kill the Company, people were saying to me, I don't have the time, I don't have the space. And that led to Why Simple Wins. And now what's interesting about Why Simple Wins, when I get off the stage, people literally want to hug me like a therapist. I mean, it's a completely different feeling of, they like to Kill the Company. They think it's really provocative. But Why Simple Wins then touched them, not from the company level, but personal level. And that's what led me to the third book, which is the feedback I keep getting is people just want to tell me their stories about, you wouldn't believe what my boss did, or, I missed this soccer game for my kid, or, they have these personal things that this catharsis they want me to help them with. And that's what I want to tackle now. And this third one is, how can I help the people that find me after my speeches get even further in that journey? So listen to how people react to your book, either those comments on Amazon or the feedback you get from people on Twitter, or when they find you after a speech, because they're probably telling what you should do for your next book.
That's really fascinating. That whole topic of innovation. I mean, I speak on creativity, not so much innovation, and that whole topic of innovation always feels like it's quite a corporate, quite a complex organizational type of thing. But your journey in terms of what the people, they kind of want to get back to the individual in some senses, in terms of like, okay, what can I do? What is my role in that? How can I contribute to that?
Well, one thing I would say too about writing is fight for what you believe in with your publisher, because if I hadn't, my book never would have been called Kill the Company, because it was too controversial. And I said, screw that, because that's the whole point. That's what sells. If you hug the middle, as they say, you're never going to sell anything. So controversy helps, provocation helps. The other thing is, I always said I want to be in two aisles in the proverbial bookstore. I want to be in the business aisle and the self-help aisle. And the reason for the business aisle is people feel good that they're going to further their career, but the self-help aisle, because that's what people really care about. People want to improve themselves, and they like to talk about themselves, and they like to diagnose themselves. So, this next book is really going to focus on the individual, because, yeah, they want to further their career, and yes, they want to help their company, but you know what they really want to help? Themselves. So I really got to figure out that work-life balance piece and that complexity piece for the individual next time.
That's a really hard piece to do, because I agree with that Venn diagram of, if I think of, in my topic of creativity, the artist's way at one end, with Julia Cameron, great book, very self-help, but then Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. These are both they come at it from different perspectives. But there's something there there is something there in the middle, but that's a hard book to write, I think.
I think that's the problem, which is, it's always, do I just use it as a chapter at the end of the book, and just call it, something for you? The way I've gotten around it frankly, is the aha moment for me has been putting in a whole chapter about tools, because I really want to empower, do I want to be someone who's known as just a thought leader? That's great. But the other thing I really want to be known for is helping people do it themselves. And that's the practical, what I call Midwestern side of me, which is I just want to, I want to give them things that they can do. And that's why in my last book, the things people come up to me and say is, I really liked your book, and I really read your tool of, I do kill a stupid rule with my team all the time. I do within and Jason Beyond with my team all the time. Killer questions with my team all the time. But then I know not only did they read it, but they're using it. So that's one of my signature pieces, is we always put in tools at the back so people can take it and get it done.
And I guess that then leads quite nicely on to the consulting part and the speaking part of your business as well, where when the speaking people, the client is looking for deliverables, what are they going to be able to do when they get back into the office on Monday morning? What is still going to be there what is that phrase that they're going to all internally with an organization are going to be talking about? Oh, let's do a XYZ, let's have we done this? That translation into doing that is great, because otherwise you're in the world of the academic of just purely being an intellectual exercise.
Well, I also think there's an advantage to it, because people say, well, how do you know with your book that what you're saying is true? And some people do it via research. I'm not a big quantitative research person. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist. So mine is through actual experience and anecdotes. And I think people, they like data. They also like stories. So when you're writing a book, you have to have a thesis, you have to have something provocative, and you have to prove it. And so, of course, I have to have data, but I really have the stories, and I do that through my business. So, we run Kill the Company workshops, and people dig it. They love it, because we get in there and we show them how they can literally be their competitor and find their weaknesses quickly. And then with Killing Complexity, we do the same thing. And what's great about it is that I can tell them across lots of different big companies that they're familiar with how they did, how they killed rules or how they killed their company and what happened. And people really relate to that because they think you get their world, right? You understand the day-to-day that they live in and understand that it is doable.
That's great. I love that. It's a real virtuous circle then about all these things kind of feeding into each other and building upon each other. What does your writing ritual look like? How are you very much, you work in blocks of time? I mean, you're known as someone as extremely productive in your articles and also your books as well. How do you get stuff done?
I'm very disciplined. I definitely have my to-do lists that I like to do. I'm one of those people that's the oxymoron. I feel like it's not about what's on your to-do list, but you also have to have one to organize yourself. I get up early. So I'm an early morning person and I like to get all my writing done when it's quiet. I'm alone and I have a massive cup of coffee in front of me. That's a ritual. The other thing that my writing ritual is once I have all my research organized, until that's done, I can't start writing. I make a plan to tackle a chapter each week. That's how I do it. So to me, it's about the process of, all right, we've got the outline, let's do a chapter each week. And then once we have it written, we go back and we start the editing process. But it's early morning, cup of coffee, has to be definitely silent.
And then what about tools? Are there any tools that you use, apps? What do you use in terms of for writing that are very effective for you?
Well, not many. I'll be honest. I'm going to be the person that when you interview is going to be really old school. So I think my biggest secret weapon is I ask very provocative questions and I have very avant-garde search terms. Because I think that when you go online, Google's not a search engine, it's an answer engine. And basically, you can get whatever data you want. Are you asking good questions and using the right search terms? So, being very creative in the adjectives you use, the search terms, looking at the negative side, not just the positive side. Those are the types of things I go in terms of my research. I don't use a lot of apps. The other thing that I do, and this isn't a ritual, but this is just a good practice, is I spend a lot of time walking, whether it's walking my dogs, walking at night, walking home. And the reason for that is, there's obviously a lot of good science around it, but it's thinking time and processing time. And that's usually where I have a lot of epiphanies is when I'm alone and I'm just walking. I'll even drive and I'll go to, forest preserves and I'll just walk for a full hour and let my mind wander. And that's where I get a lot of my thoughts.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's tons of science to back support that. I mean, even the color you mentioned being out in a national park, the color green, the University of Berlin just did a big research piece all about that. That color green, having that color green around you, doing some low level physical activity, walking is great for that thought process.
I like getting back to basics because I do feel like writers feel a lot of pressure, like they're never doing it right. Like I didn't search right, I didn't find the right research, I didn't talk to the right people, I don't know all the apps to use. And to me, again, as a simplicity expert is don't. So just like cut the crap, don't feel the pressure. Whatever works for you, do a couple things well rather than trying to do everything.
And what about a book? Is there one book that you would recommend for someone who is on this journey just now? Maybe they're just in the process of writing that first book. It could be a book on the writing process or on ideas, generating ideas more generally.
So here's a dumb thing, but might be a smart thing. One of the things that we teach in terms of understanding how to get an idea and how to create an innovation. It's the same thing as creating a book. And we ask people, how do they actually create things? What's their process for getting things done? And we tell them not to write it down, but to draw it. And what's interesting about that is people, they kind of think about, okay, I'm going to write a book. Okay, how am I going to do it? Rather than writing down the steps of how you want to write a book, draw how you envision the process of a book going. And it might start with somebody saying, there's a light bulb over here over your head, and then it's an arrow to a library or a search engine, and then it's to a Google Doc where they organize it. But what that's trying to do is get the process down on paper for them to see how do they think and how do they organize, and then how do they want to start engaging people in that process or change it. It's a good visualization technique that'll help them get organized and maybe create a plan to go forward.
That's great. I mean, we've had one of our other guests was just talking about two of our guests talking about how they mind map the structure of their book right at the start. And he said, before when they used to do it in very linear fashion, they couldn't really see the connections, and that disparate thing over there was actually, oh wow, that's actually connected to that other thing down here. I just never saw it before because in a linear fashion you don't see those connections.
It's the same type of thing, because a lot of people think, I mean, it's why we get so bored in meetings, because people use PowerPoint, versus when they get up at a board and they start drawing it, people start to get engaged because they can suddenly see what's in your head.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens with when people are trying to tackle something big like a book, like, God, I got to write a book. How am I going to do it? Oh my God. Okay, so don't write it down, draw it out. And especially for people that are more linear thinkers, that's going to be it's like mind mapping, right? It's this aha moment where they might not realize that's how they think or how they organize their thoughts. And it suddenly starts helping them break it down into parts. And that's the key thing in solving a problem. When you break it down into parts or a big project, it's easier to tackle.
So final question for you. I want you to imagine tomorrow morning you wake up and you have to start from scratch. Your previous books don't exist. No one knows you. You know no one. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart things?
Well, that's interesting. So once I got up out of the fetal position and had a couple cups of coffee, went for a walk and calmed myself down. Well, my big thing is I have a big legal size piece of paper and I have a pen, and I just start writing down, like, what are the big thoughts in my head? Like, write down every big thought. So if I could write a book and I would want to be known for something, what I want to be known for? What's my area of expertise? What has nobody written before? What's a topic that somebody seems to own, but I disagree with their point of view, and maybe I could look at it differently. So if I was starting again, you have to figure out, what do I want to write? And those are the types of like killer questions I would start to ask myself. I could figure out, what's my topic. I wouldn't start researching or doing anything like that. I'd want to figure out, what's my point of view.
I think that's great. Starting with those kind of questions. We've had Warren Berger on this, who wrote a great book about questioning, and he's spending those first 10 minutes of any kind of bring something, questioning the question. And it opens up a completely different way of thinking. So, Lisa, if people want to reach out to you to learn more about the book, so they can get a copy of the book, and also learn about this latest book, maybe get on a early pre-launch for the book, or they want to learn about the business that you're involved in, or you're speaking, where's the best place for them to go and do that?
I would go to futurethink.com, which is the name of my company. So futurethink.com. You can go on Amazon, obviously, and go and take a look for the books there. And actually, if you sign up for a newsletter on futurethink.com, you're going to get a preview of some of the survey questions and perhaps be interviewed for the next book, because that's the next thing, is getting those anecdotes from people that are fans or have something to say, and we're going to be doing that in the next 3 months.
Wonderful. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on today, sharing about your journey, your writing journey. I wish you all the best with this third book that you're going to be coming out with.
Thank you. I'll need all the luck I can get. So thanks very much.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.